All right. Howdy, folks. I am Brian,
I'm Amber.
and here is some Reddit. I don't think anyone is on right now, so, hi, if you're not here, but you are in the future, greetings. I gotta turn my camera off. YouTube has this weird thing now where they're making myself verify that it's actually me before I went live. So they're really cracking down on stuff, right? I mean, I think that they're just trying to. I wonder if they've had a problem with people recently getting their live streams hijacked. So that would be an interesting thing. Hi, Amy. How's it going?
Hi.
Amber is over in the corner here. We have 2 votes. That must mean that there's somebody else hiding in the chat here.
It's a tough question. I'm torn between costumes and decor.
Oh, costumes, decorations,
Yeah.
candy, weather. Hello, Mr. Super Plush. I'm hoping that oh, it's you that was hiding. Well, now we know who to blame. Blame. Is my volume okay? Oh, hi Mary.
Hi.
Welcome. Oh, so far costumes are in the lead.
Costumes are fantastic, I will say.
Yes.
I have some costume plans. Fingers crossed I get them in order, but for October.
Oh, good, good. We'll have to see Amber's costume plans here.
Yes, thanks to some very helpful suggestions from people.
Yes, Amber has taken your suggestions to heart and she said no to all of them.
No, I have incorporated some of them. I couldn't do all because I had more suggestions than days in October that I'll be on camera, but
Yeah. And Amy says that she got her Bellatrix Lestrange costume ready to go, and I probably did not say that right at all, and I'm so sorry.
I think I've only read the name because she's from Harry Potter, but like I don't know how you
Oh.
pronounce
Yes, I
it
haven't I haven't seen any of the Harry Potters. I did see part of a Harry Potter once.
with
So,
Derek.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I did see part of a Harry Potter movie. It's a challenging pronunciation, so we'll just assume I said it correctly then.
I still haven't figured out what Brian and I are gonna be for Halloween night. Like that's the one I'm stuck on because I want to do something new, but I don't know what we should be.
Yeah, but let's get started. Let's get started. Oops, that's not what I was looking for. I think I lost my thing here. I had it in the wrong order. There we go. Our first letter is titled, "Am I a jerk for telling my mother-in-law that she was dead to me after she showed up in labor and delivery without my mother?" And Mr. Superplush also says that I have Lydia Dietz waiting a wedding dress costume ready. That sounds like it's gonna be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So this one is a bit of a wild one. So let's get started. For the past 3 months, it's been very well known plan that when I, a 30-year-old female, went into labor, my husband was going to drive me to the hospital and my mother-in-law was going to pick up my mother, my kids, and my grandmother, all from one house. Both my mother-in-law and my mom were supposed to be in the delivery room. My gram was to watch my 2 kids in the waiting room. Everyone was in agreement with a plan. Now my husband and I have 2 sons already, and both births. My mother was present. She helped me through so much of the mental anguish and panic, especially after my last, whom literally almost killed me. I was bleeding on the table, and my mom was the only one able to keep me calm. I needed her to be with me with this baby too, mentally. So we worked out a plan months in advance, and everyone was on the same page. However, I go into labor. We make phone calls and to my mother-in-law and my mom, telling my mom to be ready and my mother-in-law to go get my mother. An hour and 15 minutes later, my mother-in-law shows up at the hospital without my mom, my kids, or my grandmother. She said, well, it's too late, so we just need to let everyone sleep. It was 9:30 p.m. and then sat her butt down on the chair in the delivery room and just jumped on her phone. I told her in a mad tone to go get my mom. That was the plan. I needed my mom, etc., etc. And she just wouldn't. At one point, saying that she didn't feel up to driving that much. My mom lives 20 minutes from her house, an hour away. So I told her to get out of the room and that she was dead to me. The amount of resentment and disgust that I felt towards her in this moment was honestly not something I felt and before and will not overcome anytime soon. She was mad, saying that my mom got to experience two births already, and how she didn't do anything wrong, and that she was just being respectful of people's sleep. And where she wasn't leaving, that she was actually, oh, and when she wasn't leaving, she was actually escorted out. Now, my mom was able to make it to the hospital literally just as I was giving birth. My kids and my grandmother weren't able to make it, which bothers me a great deal. We promised our kids that they would be able to meet their sister outside of us and Grammy first. I cannot forgive my mother in law for this at all. I honestly feel like I hate her with every fiber of my being. But I'm being told that I'm taking this too far and that it wasn't that big of a deal. Am I the jerk? All right, folks, what do you think? Jerk or not the jerk?
I mean, I don't think Opie is the jerk for being upset with what mother-in-law did. It seemed very selfish and inconsiderate to just ignore the plan they had going. Like it wasn't like she called up everyone and they were like, "Yeah, we're too tired. Sorry, we don't want to go
Yeah, yeah.
anymore." Everyone was ready to go and like it's their decision whether or not they want to leave the house at 9:30 p.m.
Yeah, I think that this is just one of those situations where I can understand OP's resentment, and maybe it is a bit much, but you don't get to decide how angry somebody gets to be. And, it sounds like OP had a really traumatic experience the last time she gave birth, and that she really needed that support from her mother, and that was going to be what was going to keep her sane through all
Hmm.
this, right? And her mother-in-law just completely disregarded that.
Well, that's the thing, is it wasn't about OP's comfort at all, or literally anyone but mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Mother-in-law just wanted what was convenient, and some people speculate in the comments that like mother-in-law was like upset that even though she opted out of going to the other two births, that she was just upset that that OP's mom had gotten to witness the first two and not her.
Yeah. And I just want to say hi, June. She
Hi,
made it.
June.
June made it.
Yes, yes. And did you want me to read the comments still?
Oh yeah, we can read some of the comments. Amber's gonna read some of the comments this time.
So Mary says, Mom made it and mother-in-law lost out karma. And Amy says, not the jerk, feel a bit manipulative on mother-in-law's side. Like a power play, I'm more significant than OP's mom and kids.
Yeah, I mean
It
it
does
does
feel
it does
power
feel like
play.
that.
Yeah, and then Mary agrees with Amy that it was on purpose, and Mr. Super Plush says, absolutely not. That is such an emotional and sometimes traumatic event. That could have been there's a little heart emoji cutting off the bottom of the comment on my screen. That could have spiraled her into a serious depression. Anger is better than depression.
Yeah, I noticed that YouTube has put that little heart emoji there right in front of people's text, and I
Yeah.
don't understand that. I don't understand who designed that UI there. No, I agree with those comments. Those all seem very reasonable. I also agree with June's hi, all of you wonderful people. Hi, all of you wonderful people.
Yes, I'll second that.
So I really think that this is pretty straightforward. I think that OP is not in the wrong here, and certainly she's allowed to have her feelings of resentment. And I just think it's awful that someone would go out of their way to violate her wishes like this, especially when she doesn't even live that far away from people. So she either just didn't feel like driving and wasn't, or I don't know. It's pretty premeditated. It must be premeditated at that
It,
point in
it
time, right?
does. It does seem like it was premeditated.
But we'll jump to our next story. Our next story is titled, Am I a Jerk for Refusing to Tell My Husband Where I Was After He Jokingly Kicked Me Out of the House for the Night? Last night, my husband had his friends over. After I had gone to bed, they were all still awake, drinking and playing games and being loud, which was annoying to me because I needed to get up to work in the morning. When I went out to ask them to stop making so much noise because they were keeping me awake, my husband said to me, Go sleep somewhere else if you're so bothered. It was supposed to be a joke. He was quoting a show or something like that, but in the moment, it very much made me mad. So I went across the hall to our neighbor's apartment and I slept there. After a while, my husband started calling and texting me to ask where I was. I replied to one of the texts saying, somewhere else. and then ignoring after that. My husband saying that I took it too far because I knew that he was just drunk and trying to be funny, and I should have told him where I went because he was worried about me all night long. All right, folks, what do you think? Jerk or not the jerk?
I'm gonna go with OP is not the jerk here. Like, here is a grown adult who knows his wife needs to work in the morning, and he and his friends are loud enough to disrupt her sleep and then have the audacity to be like, go somewhere else. Like, that's just such an uncalled for reaction. Like, he's an adult. If he can't keep it down, he should have, one, gone someplace where people aren't working,
Mm-hmm.
or two, not not gotten drunk to a point where he's gonna be super loud.
Yeah, I'm wondering why they couldn't have gone to one of the other people's houses for this. It seems like if they're going to have a party and they know that OP is going to be working in the morning, then either one, they really do need to kind of keep things down for her, or two, they need to go to a different place. And I think that's really reasonable. And them trying to play this off as a joke, it doesn't feel like a joke in the moment,
No,
right?
it doesn't. Especially if it's like, even if it's some reference, if OP doesn't get it, then like, if it's just some reference that they all have as like a little in joke or something, like,
Mm-hmm. Well, even if it is a reference, and even if she does get it, tell me, have you ever been in the mood for jokes when you're trying to go to sleep?
well, that's a very good point. Yeah.
I have never, if someone were trying to keep me awake with jovial Bobstein jokes, then I would not be happy about that. I understand the reference. I understand maybe they're trying to make me laugh, but there's a time and a place for that, and that's never.
Just to be clear, that does not happen. I do not sit up at night reading jovial Bob sign jokes to Brian.
Sure. What is
So June says, I don't think it was a joke. I would have been upset too. Mary says, not the jerk. It's not funny if it's rude, even as
Mhm.
a joke. And June says, I really don't like to deal with drunk people.
Yeah, I feel you on that level, June.
Amy says, Opie's husband took it too far, not the jerk. Drunk or not, him and his friends are responsible for their actions.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Superplush says, not really. I mean, she did what he asked. It benefits them both, and he should have just left her alone so he didn't inconvenience her sleep further. And Mary says, hubby wanted to flex his macho humor. Opie flexed her I'm not laughing response.
I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, I agree on those. I agree on those. I think those are all good points. Well said, folks. Well said. And what are we at for the so far our poll? It looks like costumes are in the lead at 50%. Then we have decorations at 33%, and then weather at 17%. But no one likes candy, the poor candy. All right. Our next letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Not Wanting to Pay the Extra Money My Mother-in-Law Put for a Gift That I Didn't Ask For? My mother-in-law bought me a new coffee machine. I don't know why, as the one I have is still working fine, but whatever. I accepted it. More before leaving, she told me that I needed to pay her $30. I asked her why, and she said that she planned on putting down only $50 in the gift, but the cheapest coffee maker that she could find was around $80, so I needed to put in another $30 that she added in for the machine. I was confused because if she planned on only putting a certain amount of money into the gift that I, once again, didn't ask for, then why not give up the coffee machine idea and buy something that I actually wanted for $50? She said that she didn't care about paying more if it made me happy. I said, well, clearly you do care because otherwise you wouldn't have asked me to pay an extra $30. She said that it was just a matter of principle and that if I had manners, I would pay, I would pay her, I guess. And then she left. She later texted my husband and said that she was waiting on the $30 and would take back the coffee machine if I didn't pay it. Oh, being refoed, a coffee machine that you don't want being repossessed. Totally heartbreaking here. I told my husband to respond that she could come and take it back because I wasn't going to give her $30. My husband is not okay with that because he got attached to the machine. Well, then he can pay the $30. And whatever that means. And to just give her $30. I told my husband that if he wanted to keep the machine, then he should give his mom the money that she wants. He said that I needed to do it because the gift is originally mine, even though I never asked for it. He said that I was making this harder than it needed to be and was being selfish to not pay the extra $30 for the coffee machine. His mom got me, especially knowing that he likes it. I have a hard time seeing how I'm in the wrong here, so I'm coming here because there might be a chance that I am in the wrong. Should I just give his mom the $30 like she asked and be done with it? All right, folks, what do you think?
No, OP is not the jerk, and don't give her the money. Like, OP not only has a mother-in-law problem, but a husband problem here.
And a coffee machine problem.
Yeah, like, it is not a gift if you are charged money for it. Like, I don't care if she's not charging you the full price, it's still not what you do with a gift. Like,
Yeah, gifts aren't something you pay for. Like no one's like I gave you this house, but you have to pay me rent for the rest of your life, right?
or, oh, here's a sweater, but it retails for $50, so you should give me like 20 for it. Like, that's like bartering. That's not a gift.
Yeah.
And then the husband's audacity to be like, well, because it's a gift to you, you have to pay for it, even though I'm going to be the one getting it. Like, it sounds like it was a gift for OP's husband that she passed off to OP so she could charge her money. It's a very weird situation.
I actually have another theory entirely. She got the coffee machine at a yard sale for $10 and she's getting a $20 markup on it. I mean, there are some good quality coffee machines out there, right? But unless you're like really, really, really into coffee, you're probably not going to spend $80 on a coffee machine. I don't know. I mean,
I have no idea how much coffee machines retail for.
well, I mean, a cheap one that you can get at with like just the one of the drip basket ones, those are just like 20, $30, right? So if you're looking at getting an $80 machine, then it's going to be a much higher quality one. At least the last time I went shopping for coffee machines, they were not that expensive. Generally, you're not going to spend too much on them. And then there's like all kinds of yeah. I mean, I'm not a coffee machine connoisseur here.
June says, not the jerk. I don't think it's a gift if you have to pay for it. Amy says, not the jerk. A gift is free, especially if it's not something you asked for. Mary says, not the jerk. Give it back ASAP. If hubby won't put out the effort, hubby doesn't get to enjoy it. If Opie does give in, I would do it with the admonition, please don't ever give me a gift again. Amy says, and yes, Opie has a husband problem in addition to a mother-in-law problem. Yes, give it back. And Mary says, question, was this for an occasion?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question.
And then Mr. Superplus says, Opie's husband, yeah, Mom, I know it's kind of pricey, but she really has her heart set on this coffee machine.
Yeah, I mean I think that's a good theory right there. Well, I mean also they unwrapped it and used it apparently because enough that where he's attached to it at this point in time. So it's not even like you can return it back to the store at this point.
And June says, I would definitely spend $80 on a coffee machine. I'm a coffee person.
I mean, if that's what you want, I'm not saying that it's not something that's worthwhile. I mean, everyone has their own like preferences. I actually use a coffee filter in a funnel, and that's how I make my coffee in the morning. So, just fun fact. It's a very rudimentary way of making. So, okay, the problem I have with coffee machines is they're hard to clean, right? Even if you get a coffee machine where you put the water in the back, sometimes stuff builds up back there. And that just kind of weirds me out. And that's why I have a funnel, because I can clean that. I can see all the parts of it, and I can just be like, yep, yeah, it's done. It's clean. I don't have to worry about this again.
And June is drinking coffee now.
Oh, that's a wonderful choice.
Amy got her coffee machine for free. Hubby's coworker was getting rid of hers for a Keurig, and I wanted a coffee maker.
Yeah, so did she get a Keurig then, or is that just like another oh, you must have gotten a coffee machine for yourself. And the Keurig, well, Keurigs are like $80 machines or more, right? Those ones are actually really expensive. Oh, and with cream or sugar? No, I drink my coffee black. So that's my coffee drinking habits right there. A lot of coffee banter.
Indeed.
So we'll check in on the poll. It looks like it's been updated. Oh no, costumes and decorations. They're neck and neck. 43 and 43.
Excellent.
I'm very curious about how this poll ends. You got 7 votes in it. Our next letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Telling My Husband and His Ex-Wife that they need to hire a tutor as I won't help them educate my stepson? I'm a 38-year-old female, and I've been married to my husband, a 39-year-old male, for 4 years, and we've been together for 7 all in all. He has a 10-year-old son from his previous marriage, and I love him a lot. My husband splits custody with his ex-wife 50-50, with them alternating weeks. They have been in talks about my stepson's education for a while, as he doesn't thrive in traditional schooling environment, and they want to homeschool him. If done right, I don't see an issue with this, even though I do have concerns about his social needs. I expressed those thoughts, but beyond that, I didn't offer much input. He's their son, and his education is up to them. I had an issue, however, when they seemed to think that I could oversee his education, when he's saying with his father and I. They even commented how I'm always home, so it's perfect. I work remotely as a data analyst, so yes, I'm around, but I'm working and I'm not free to play teacher. Helping with homework outside of work is fine, but actually teaching, that's not my job. I told them as much, and they said that if I want to do this, they said that if they want to do this, then it's either his mom would have to come around during my work hours, or they'll have to hire a tutor, as I won't be splitting my focus between teaching and him and my job. Even told them that I would be happy to put money towards a tutor. So I think I read that a little bit wrong. So OP's not going to do this unless they have a tutor come by her house
Mm-hmm.
or their mom come by the house. They feel that I'm being unreasonable and that his ex-wife even questioned if I see their son as family, if I've got so little interest in his homeschooling and what's best for him. This led to harsh words said on both sides. My husband actually took her side in this and has told me that he's disappointed in me, that it's not like his son is a little kid who will be underfoot constantly, and surely the point of remote working is that I can have a balance to help out around home. I suggested that if he felt that way, then maybe he should see about working
Yes.
remotely. I feel pretty bad about this. I love my stepson and I want a good future for him and for education, for him and to be in education and to thrive. But I don't see why it's down to me to educate him when I work full time, even if I work from home. My husband is currently really upset with me, and the fact that they're both in agreement with this makes me question if I'm in the wrong, if I'm being the jerk. Edit, I would like to be clear, they could in theory homeschool him properly. This isn't something that they're wanting to do with no experience. His ex-wife is a former teacher, but had to leave her job due to health. Update, hi everyone, sorry I've not been answering messages and been very responsive on here. A few hours after this post went up, my husband and I got together and got into a huge fight and brought up this post, some of the answers, which led to him being very angry that I shared our business online. I ended up packing up my stuff. After a few texts, I arranged to go stay with my brother and his husband. I've told my husband that he needs to sort out his stuff and figure out an arrangement that doesn't involve me before I come home, and even then, I won't be back until he agrees to counseling together. All right, folks, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely don't think OP is in the wrong here. I really do not like how dismissive they're being of OP's actual work. Like
Oh, yeah,
OP
yeah.
said, like if it's so easy to do, then why doesn't hubby work remotely and do the teaching?
Yeah.
Like it seems like they don't really value OP's job. And also, what 10-year-old is motivated enough to do their own education and only need checking up on? Because it sounds like their argument is, oh, he's 10, he can teach himself. No, most 10-year-olds do not have that kind of focus and motivation to just sit there and do their work all day.
Yeah. I want to interrupt real quick and say hi to a couple more people that have joined the stream. Elena and Heather, welcome. We're glad to see you here.
Hi, everyone.
And I agree with what Amber is saying here. I think that she shouldn't be forced to drop everything she's doing. And even if he was capable of teaching himself to some degree, he's still going to require some assistance from OP. And I
Yeah.
don't think that's fair to OP. And like what Amber was saying, he's not going to be able to be in charge of his education to that degree, right?
Right. And like OP just does not have the qualifications to, as well as no desire. Like if you don't have a desire to teach, you should not be a teacher. And if you don't know how to teach, you shouldn't be a teacher. Like OP is in no way ready or able to be a teacher, and that should be argument enough to not
Mm-hmm.
do it.
Yeah. So we'll see what some of the comments has to say, but I'll agree with Amy. I know not everyone can do black coffee, and the heart palpitations. I can only drink like a cup of coffee a day these days.
All right, getting into the more relevant comments. Now the coffee chat's over for now. Mary says, not the jerk. There's a lot of luggage that comes with tutoring. In the best circumstances, to ask for tutoring from an unwilling tutor won't turn out well for anyone.
That's a really good point.
Um, and then, let's see, my comments keep moving on me. Mary adds, X is a former teacher. Heck no. Elena says, exactly. Amy says, not the jerk. I agree that OP is not being taken seriously. June says, not the jerk. It seems she already has taken the control out of the situation. I really hope things work out. Amy says, also working from home means actual working from home.
Yeah, yeah.
Kids need motivation. Very few kids that age are self-motivated. Did they learn nothing from COVID? And that's a good point.
Yeah.
Heather says, I agree with Amber on this. And Mr. Super Plush says, I hate when parents assume their kids are overly responsible. They just don't want to be involved in their lives.
Well, and then another point here is if he was doing well in traditional education, then if he can't teach himself in traditional education, then why do they think that he's going to be able to teach himself in this situation, right? It just seems to be kind of asking for things to go wrong because if he doesn't have the motivation, and I mean, not all of this is motivation. Sometimes you need a good teacher. Sometimes people have a hard time teaching themselves, right?
Well, and kids like don't necessarily have the tools that a skilled teacher does. So like even kids who are
Yeah.
self-motivated may not know like how to teach them those things because that's an actual process. Like as someone who has taught people things,
Yeah.
it's not as simple as always sitting down at a textbook and just reading it and you get all the information.
Mm-hmm.
You need, worksheets and exercises and all kinds of stuff, and you may need discussions with other people
Yeah.
and
Well, and then the grading on top of that. And is OP going to have to do all of the grading? Like, who's going to do that? She doesn't have time for that. It takes a long time to grade assignments. And I mean, if you're not proficient at grading assignments, it takes even longer. So it's one of those things where they're going to be like, oh, why aren't you keeping up on his classwork? Why aren't you grading him? Why aren't you doing all these other things? You're supposed to be at home doing this. This is a full-time job for a reason. That's why teaching is a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
They want her to work 2 shifts, and I think that's just absolutely ridiculous. Speaking of absolutely ridiculous, our next letter is titled, Will I be the jerk if I refuse to be a bridesmaid in my best friend's wedding? So I'm a 25-year-old female, recently learned that one of my best friends from college, Lila, a 25-year-old female, is engaged. I'm incredibly happy for her, and I was initially excited until she told me that her and her fiance, Ben, a 27-year-old male, what their plans for the wedding are. For some background, I met Lila in college. We were dorm roomies in freshman year, and then roomies again at a nearby apartment in junior year. Senior year, she moved in with Ben, and I got a new roommate. A few months later, the pandemic began. Ben and Lila used the pandemic to try and develop interest together. Both of them enjoy their at-home movie dates, so they tried to find a film and a TV series to watch together. A month into this endeavor, one of Ben's friends suggested Game of Thrones. And to say that they got hooked is an understatement. Aside from her chosen field of study and work, I have legitimately never seen Lila so passionate about something. It became her and Ben's life. They watched the series, read the books, and even started dressing up for conventions. I thought that this was super sweet, but I'm not much of a high fantasy person. And I've heard that the show is heavy on gore and SA, which I have a lot of trouble sitting through. Lila did invite once to rewatch the party that she and Ben hosted next year, but I declined and told her why. And I told her, and she's not made efforts to get me interested since she says that she gets it. While I would definitely call Lila and Ben's interest in the show obsessive, they don't push it onto other people, and it's not caused issues so far when me or other friends aren't into it. That being said, I'm worried that if I refuse to be a bridesmaid in their wedding due to her Game of Thrones theme, I'm worried that she'll actually take it poorly. I don't know if this makes me a jerk, but I genuinely do not want to put money into hair, dress, or makeup for me to be styled as an imaginary character for a wedding. It feels ridiculous. She and her husband are going to be married, dressed as their favorite characters, who are either in a relationship or they think that they should be. All of the names are hard for me to keep up with, and I get them confused. And the bridesmaids and groomsmen will all be styled to look like other characters, and the guests will be asked to wear house colors of the characters the bride or the groom are dressed as, depending on which are invited them. We haven't been assigned our characters yet, but I don't care. I don't want to do it. I want Ben and Lila to have their special day, and I want to be what they want, and I want it to be what they want. But I don't want to pay good money for what essentially costumes or what are costumes of fake people. It feels weird, but I want to be supportive and not a jerk. Will I be the jerk if I backed out? Edit, just to clarify two things. My main concern is how much money that I'll have to sink into this because she doesn't want a simple dress that sort of goes with the characters. She wants the full, somewhat extensive costume and most likely expensive styled lace fronts. I don't want to sink that kind of money into something that I'm going to feel ridiculous wearing. Also, I wasn't necessarily asked. I just was added to the group chat and she said, "You're all going to be my bridesmaids." I replied excitedly before she started rolling out all of these expectations. All right, folks, what do you think?
No, I don't think OP's being a jerk here. That's a pretty big ask. Like, and I even someone who had a very lightly themed wedding, I think themed weddings can be a lot of fun, but you also have to understand that your theme probably means more to you than it does to all your guests,
Yeah.
unless you're all really, really big fans. And so expecting someone to shell out like upwards of $1,000 for a look that they're never going to wear again, I feel like that's a pretty big ask. And I know there are some people who make their bridesmaids buy specific dresses, but I also feel like that's not cool either. So,
yeah, I think that unfortunately there's been a big trend in recent years. And I mean, this has been going on forever, I guess, but weddings have been getting more and more expensive. And it's to the point where I feel like it's kind of a little much to ask for certain people to spend because I mean, not all weddings, right? Hashtag not all weddings. But when you're asking people to spend thousands of dollars on your wedding, there might be time to reevaluate what you're asking of your friends, unless your friends are all millionaires. I mean, if your friends are all millionaires, then yeah, go ahead, ask them to spend thousands of dollars on your wedding. I don't care.
Yeah. But like the average person, $1,000 or more is a lot of money to drop on a single event. It's
Yeah.
not even their event. Like they're there as a guest.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I don't think OP's in the wrong for not wanting to. And like, I think if she hasn't talked to the friend about the financial aspect, it might be worth having a sit down with the friend
Yeah.
first and
Oh,
being
yeah.
like, hey, I just can't, this isn't in my budget. Is there, like, I'm happy to, if you would rather have someone who will fit your aesthetic, like, you can ask them instead, but like, I don't think I can do this, or can we compromise?
Yeah. Well, I also think the bombing them with the invites to
Mm-hmm.
be a bridesmaid, there wasn't even like an ask. It was like a you're
Guess
being
what?
my
You're a
yeah.
bridesmaid, which isn't how that's generally done.
And I think that that was a little bit in poor form. And I do think that OP should express their concerns about being a bridesmaid. Now, this is a long ways off, right? This wedding has a lot of time to prepare. So if OP is able to set aside a little bit of money, depending on, they can say, I'm willing to spend this much money, and then from there, OP can determine, like, they can work out whether or not that's going to be an acceptable amount of money, right?
Well, and I think too, like if you're someone who wants an elaborately themed wedding and you're expecting your guests to like show up in costume, the onus is on you to make
Mm-hmm.
that vision happen. So you have to foot the bill. And I know it's a lot. Like if you have five bridesmaids and five groomsmen, then that could be like, 10 grand. But again, it's not fair to be asking everyone to shell out $1,000 each for your wedding
Yeah.
just to get dressed up.
Yeah. What do our comments have to say?
So Mary says, not the jerk, but will the bride and groom react in a true Game of Thrones bloodbath to the refusal? Take care, OP.
I would be worried about that. Maybe they will. Maybe that's what actually OP is worried about.
And then June says, I don't know if she's a jerk. It sounds like the wedding is going to be a blast.
Mm-hmm.
Amy says, I think OP has some questions to ask her friend before just declining. If the bride is that good of a friend, she should be able to voice concerns. I would try to find a thrift costume.
Yeah, I totally agree on that.
Mr. Superplush says, watching it again, it does give me the ick that so much of the fantasy world is made to make SA/CA the norm. That's
Yeah, that's a pretty problematic thing, and unfortunately, it seems like that's been a trend since Game of Thrones, or maybe it was a trend before Game of Thrones, but it seems to be especially problematic since Game of Thrones.
And Heather says dropping out being a bridesmaid is not a jerk move.
Yeah,
And then June says, I agree, weddings are getting expensive. Our wedding was very inexpensive and we are still married. Our wedding was also pretty
yeah,
inexpensive
yeah,
because we had a COVID wedding.
yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that we weren't ever planning on having like an expensive wedding, and
No, I mean, I did have grander ideas before COVID hit and kind of narrowed my scope, but I was actually really happy with the smaller wedding we had.
yeah,
It was much more me.
yeah.
I feel like a lot of people feel so much pressure to like have all the works when you
Hmm.
don't need that.
Well, and that's just it. I think there's a pressure. It's not just the bride and groom who want
Mm-hmm.
to have a big party, though I'm sure a lot of people do. It's that there's a social idea that you need to have an expensive wedding. If you're not having an expensive wedding, then what are you doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of something that feeds itself, where people, feel obligated to have a big wedding because the
Mm-hmm.
expectation is to have a big wedding.
Yeah, and like, I definitely, when I was initially planning our wedding, felt some of that pressure, like, oh, we need to have a DJ, even though neither of us dances. And so, like, I was actually really glad we didn't end up having that because, like, that would have been tiring. And
Hmm.
yeah, so, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also June, we are not with money.
Yeah,
We are
well, that
not
was,
money
we were
people.
very limited on our budget too. It just really helped when the world was, the universe was like, yeah, you can't spend this money.
Our next letter is titled, Am I a jerk for telling my son that he needs to live with the consequences of ignoring what his children were saying? My son lost his first wife when their two children were preschoolers. My grandson is now 17 and my granddaughter is almost 16. The relationship with my son has been on a downward spiral for years. It started when he and his current wife moved in together. She had two kids of her own, and early on, they showed extreme jealousy whenever their mom would pay for any attention or buy anything for the grandkids. They were older teenagers and said a number of cruel things to my grandkids. My grandkids told my son, they told my wife and I spoke with our son, but he ignored all four of us. My wife also spoke to my son's second wife prior to the wedding, and she said that her kids would adjust in time. My grandkids spent years living with two much older kids who told them that they deserved to have their mother passed away and that she wanted them to that's all terrible stuff. All terrible stuff. Nobody wants them around type of stuff. Bullying, absolute horrible bullying. They accused them of stealing from them because their mom shouldn't be doing anything for them. There were incidents where they broke their stuff and their mom bought my grandkids. My wife and I pleaded with our son to do something to help his kids. We said that they didn't deserve to be raised like this. The problem continued even after the older kids moved out. They still expressed a lot of jealousy and hatred for my grandkids. I've never interacted much with my son's stepkids. I saw them a handful of times in the years that my son has been married to his current wife. They would mostly go to their dad if my son and his wife were spending time with any of us or our other kids, or they would reject offers to spend time with us. But a few times that we did see them, I would always be shocked by how blatant their hate of my grandkids was and how my son never appeared to care. One incident in particular stands out. It was my granddaughter's birthday, and she got some art kit that she wanted. It set off two of the older kids who called her a baby, a bee baby, and they even broke part of the kit. My wife and I spoke to our son and his wife, but they did nothing and said nothing. My grandkids now spend a lot of time with myself and my wife. They hardly speak to their dad despite living under his roof. They wanted us to get custody of them, but we were denied. So they have taken to doing their best to make it through the next few years. My son is only now starting to care about the relationship with his kids, and that has been destroyed. He asked me why we tried to fight for custody. He asked me why we tried to fight for custody of the kids when he's their dad, and accused my wife and I of turning the kids against him. This is when I stopped him and said that we didn't turn them against him. He's just living with the consequences of ignoring his kids and what they were trying to tell him. I told him that he put them through years of bullying so he could marry and stay married, and now he had to live with his decision. My son ranted at me and said that the last thing that any parent should do is try to make their kid feel bad about themselves, which is what I was doing. Am I the jerk? And how much irony does that last bit have in it?
Yeah, like, OP, no, you're not the jerk for looking out for your grandchildren's well-being. Like, their dad was just letting them be bullied
Yeah.
relentlessly. And, oh, yeah, yeah, I'll fix it. Yeah, by doing absolutely nothing. Like, he is a terrible parent, and it's really unfortunate that you couldn't get custody of these poor kids.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just unfortunate that if you can see blatant bullying like this, that you can't do something to stop it. And I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
certainly understand not wanting to break up families, but if the kids at a certain point should be able to have a say in if they want to live with a different family member, right?
Yeah, like, this clearly is not a healthy home environment for them.
And I mean, I don't even know why he was even concerned about them at a certain point, because it doesn't even seem like he cares, right? So
Right.
why would he care if they went and moved or lived with their grandparents, right? So yeah, this is heartbreaking, and the level of bullying that these poor kids had to endure is just awful. It's really is not something that any kid should have to deal with.
Yeah, I agree completely. And folks say, so Amy says, wow, that's horrible, not the jerk. These brats need consequences.
Yeah,
This is next level bullying. Anyway, OP could let the grandkids stay with them. And then Heather says, how heartbreaking. The grandparents tried so hard to have their son see how the kids were being treated. Dad ignored his kids, so he turned the kids against himself. It's
yeah,
the consequences of his neglect. Mary says, when kids are involved, there should be an absolute unanimous yes before cohabitation begins. No kid should feel like home is not home. I wish OP could take full custody, not the jerk. June says, that's so terrible, not the jerk. He did this to himself. I'm glad that OP tried to look out for these kids. Mr. Super Plush says, sounds like narcissistic behavior. As long as they are getting what they want, who cares about the consequences of the people around you?
yeah,
The dad and wife are terrible people.
yeah. I mean, I think that those all kind of hit the nail on the head here, and it's a really unfortunate situation, and the poor kids in this, poor kids. I really just feel nothing but the worst for them. And hopefully this one's a little bit lighter. That one was a little heavy, a little heavy. Don't worry, folks. We actually have a really nice letter to end this off on.
Mm-hmm.
So all the torture we're putting you through, it will pay off. We actually have a nice one to end on today. Our next letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Going on a Trip and Then Abandoning My Family? I'm a 35-year-old female, and I married my husband Ed, a 40-year-old male, when I was 25. He was already had an established career, owned his own home, etc. He understood my need for the same, an established career and property in my own name. I worked hard to get these both by the time that I was 32, but the pressure from both my parents and his family made us decide to have a child. Since everything was split 50-50 up to childbirth, I expected the same after childbirth as well. I took care of the house management and the child care in my paid maternity leave. After the 6 months were up, I wanted to go back to work. My husband suggested that I stay home with the baby until she turned 2. I didn't want to take a break from the career, but the fact that he out-earned me, and it seemed logical solution was that he would support both of us. But then COVID happened. We couldn't send her to daycare. I was again the primary parent for 2 more years, even though my husband worked from home. I didn't complain since he was the sole bread earner. But last year, I finally got a job and started sending our daughter to kindergarten. I was happy. I was more committed to the job than ever. But I had to work long hours, and that meant splitting home chores and childcare. Maybe it was a break that he got for 4 years, but husband seemed to get depressed and agitated at having to do chores. He mentioned here and there how unfair he had it to do these when clearly I could do it all. Yesterday, my boss asked me to travel next week for a work thing. It's a week-long trip and is expected in my profession. When I told my husband this, he was incredibly mad at me, saying that I shouldn't commit to trips like these since I have duties at home. That's right, folks, duties at home. I reminded him whenever he went on work trips, I managed it all by myself. He said that it's not the same since I'm a woman.
Ugh.
I didn't like that and told him that it's his duty as a partner and parent, and gender has nothing to do with it. I refused to back down from the trip. He called both sets of parents, and they are now blasting my phone, telling me that as a wife and mom, my primary responsibility is family, that I shouldn't abandon Ed. No matter my arguments are saying that I can do it so he can. They are saying that I'm being selfish for going. Am I the jerk? All right, folks, what do you think? Jerk or not the jerk?
Absolutely not the jerk. I mean, this guy needs to learn to step up. He's been like profiting off of OP's hard labor in their household, like taking care of the house, the kid, and now working on top of that. Like, this is really, really gross. And he feels kind of manipulative, like bringing the parents in
Oh,
that
that
situation.
was what I was gonna bring up.
Yeah, like this is an argument between the two of you. You do not need to bring the parents into it. They're just trying to bully OP into submission.
Well, and that's exactly what this seems like. It seems like they're trying to push OP into submission here. And I think that's really unfortunate because, again, this is a matter between her and her husband. It's not a matter between the whole family. Unless if they're all this worried about the kids and the duties around the house, then maybe they can drop by the house while OP is on their business trip and they can do all the work if poor Ed can't manage it by himself.
Yeah, there's an idea. And part of me wonders if kind of like, because it feels like this is how, like, from early on, like the parents were like, oh yeah, you gotta have a baby. Like, it seems like they were all along trying to push OP into a trad wife role.
Yeah, well, and then, like, to examine this, OP didn't really want to have a kid,
Mm-hmm.
right? It sounds like she had a kid because she felt obligated to have a kid. And that's
Mm-hmm.
always unfortunate because you should never be obligated to have a child. If you want to have children, that's when you have children, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have doubts about having children, then you probably should really consider it until, you really want children.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's a lot of responsibility. It's not something that you can just try out. So it's one of these situations where they basically forced her into a role that she didn't want, and now they're trying to strong arm her into being a traditional wife. And they're trying to be like, oh, you can't afford to have a career. Your children and your husband will suffer.
Which is just so gross and not true. If he was an adult, then he could be doing the exact same things OP is doing.
Yeah.
He just needs to step up, be a responsible parent. He wants all the benefits of having kids without any of the work.
Yeah, well, and I mean, maybe he's not going to be able to figure out all the chores or do them exactly the way that OP would do, but that's not important, right? I mean, he can run a household for a short period of time when OP isn't around, and that's nothing outside of his capability.
Maybe he should be presented with the divorce option because if they have 50-50 custody, then he's gonna have to learn how to do all the household stuff on his own. So
Yeah, it's a pretty short-sighted in that respect, or he'll just pawn off the child care to OP, period,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But I mean, honestly, OP might be better off just losing him if he's being this garbage of a partner and bullying her into not achieving her dreams because he's too busy to do stuff.
Yeah. What do our comments have to say?
Our comments say, Mary says, clearly OP could do it all. Clearly husband is delusional. And Elena says, oh, I can't stand these kinds of husbands. OP needs a break in general, work trip or no.
She does.
Mary says, not the jerk. This kind of argument is so often settled by a 50-50 split as decided by divorce courts. Hubby should be very careful.
Mary, we're all on the same wavelength here.
June says, oh, poor hubby. Sarcasm. Not the jerk. He definitely does need to step up. I was going to say the same thing about bringing the family in the argument. Heather says, that husband is such a mooch. I'm appalled he got both parents involved. That's not a man at all. Why can't the in-laws come help?
Yeah.
And Amy says, divorce. June says, ha ha ha, I like the divorce options. Amy says, this man sounds immature and he drags mommy and daddy into this. Yeah, no. Haha, agree with Mary.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we're all in agreement here. I think that we're all in agreement about OP and their situation. We'll do another story, and then we'll do tea time, and then we'll have our last story. How's that sound, folks? Our next letter is titled, Will I Be a Jerk for Expecting My Gluten-Free Friend to Accommodate My Diet? I'm a 23-year-old female, and I'm not sure if this is the right community, but I was pondering this question after having dinner at a friend's house a few nights ago. To clarify, I'm not on a diet, I just have no food restrictions. My friend, a 23-year-old female, we'll call her Alice, is gluten-free. Not celiac, but still pretty severe. I'm not minimizing her dietary needs. My sister-in-law is also gluten-free, so I am well aware of the severity of their symptoms and how limiting it is. I have Alice over for dinner pretty frequently, and I always make sure to have either a meal or be gluten-free. I made some smaller version on the side that is gluten-free for her. She always really appreciated it, and I genuinely have no problem doing it. In fact, I kind of enjoy it. I think that it's important to make guests feel welcome in your home. So, a few nights ago, I went over to her place and she cooked us dinner. Gluten-free plain pasta and chicken with the tiniest amount of seasoning that was practically plain as well. She served me my plate without asking what I wanted, so I felt like I had to eat it. That was whatever was put in front of me. The pasta is what got me. I know gluten-free pasta isn't the worst, and maybe it's just her cooking skills, but it was barely edible. The chicken was pretty rough too. I struggled to finish my plate. Alice finished hers and no problem, and I just couldn't manage to finish the pasta. I ate the chicken and ate about half of the pasta on my plate. My appetite was gone. I could tell that she was a little miffed when we cleaned up, but didn't say anything. I also never said anything complaining or criticizing her cooking or food. I also didn't ask her to make me anything separate. So here I am a few days later, and a little bugged that she didn't even try to put the effort into making a meal that would fit my diet better. Like, is it that hard to bread chicken in flour and breadcrumbs real quick? Or make a second pot of pasta that wasn't gluten-free? I guess I'm just asking about what the etiquette is, and if I am unreasonable for expecting her to accommodate my diet just as much as I accommodate hers. And yes, I understand that her diet is an actual issue, and that mine has nothing to do with my health. I guess I was a little annoyed after all the effort that I've put in to accommodate her diet, and she seemed to just assume that gluten-free pasta was cool with me. Oh, and for context, I offered a couple of times to bring over food or anything to help with a meal. I would have been happy to buy regular pasta and throw it into a pot for myself. She repeatedly says that she doesn't need anything and that it was all taken care of. So will I be a jerk for expecting my gluten-free friend to accommodate my diet? Edit, okay, ha ha ha. Okay, I get it. I'm the jerk. All is good. It was more of a query, and I was mostly just curious about the etiquette and what it entails. I still think that the cross-contamination argument is a little invalid here because her allergy isn't that severe. Just remember, folks, a little bit of an allergen is not going to impact you. Just the tiniest little bit of peanut dust for those people who are allergic to peanuts, and they'll be great. Definitely a bit entitled on my part to expect that when I don't have any restrictions. I guess I just really hate gluten-free pasta. All right, folks, what do you think?
Yeah, I think OP was being a jerk. Well, if OP had made this request, it would have been a jerky
Yeah,
request to
yeah.
make. Because it's a huge difference, again, between someone who cannot eat something because of an allergy and needs an accommodation and someone who just doesn't like something.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I think if OP was like, oh, by the way, can we not have pasta? That would have been, in advance before she even planned the dinner. That's fine. Like if you have specific foods you don't like the gluten-free version of, you can always, suggest like, oh, hey, I'm not in a pasta mood. Could we maybe do something else?
Well, I just want to know, like, okay, this person insists that the chicken be breaded. I mean, not
Mm-hmm.
all chicken is breaded, right?
Right.
And then also, why would you assume that your gluten-free friend would have any kind of gluten around their house
Well,
whatsoever,
exactly, because
right?
of cross-contamination. I know OP's like, oh, well, it's not that severe, and there are different severities of
Oh yeah,
allergies,
yeah.
but like, why would someone who's allergic to something keep their allergen in their home? It just,
Yeah. Well, and that's just it, is that it doesn't make any sense that why her friend would have any flour, for instance, or any, breadcrumbs or anything
like, she'd
like
have to
that.
specifically buy this to accommodate OP,
Yeah.
and it's not even because, like, I understand specifically buying something to accommodate someone with an allergy,
Yeah.
but like if someone can eat anything, buying something that you can't eat because you're allergic specifically so that they can have a meal that's tastier just feels like
And I mean, to be fair, her friend might not be a very good cook, right?
mm-hmm.
And that might just be the reality of it. Maybe they are trying to learn how to cook and whatnot, and maybe they just have a lot of struggle in the kitchen. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that maybe they aren't necessarily, because like you have no problem with cooking gluten-free food. I'm sure you've tasted your gluten-free food, and if you like your gluten-free food, then
Well, OP doesn't eat the gluten free. They have just give the friend the gluten free and they have the regular version, so they may not even taste the gluten free.
yeah, well, that's fair. I mean, I would assume that they would taste it because how would you know if it tasted any good, right?
You
Like,
don't. I don't think OP cares.
what do the comments have to say?
The comments say, June says, just say thank you and go through a drive through on the way home. Elena says, I agree, June. Mr. Super Plush says, I agree too. June says, why does it have to be a big deal? Let this be a blimp in the day and move on.
Yeah,
Mary says, you're the jerk. Is OP's problem with the limited selection or the awful food? OP should eat beforehand and go to enjoy the company. Amy says, when you're invited to someone's house for dinner, you suck it up and eat what you're served, just because the difference is she can't eat what you eat, but you can't eat what she eats. Mr. Super Plush says, how entitled, not the jerk if you don't finish your plate, but it's one meal and you can leave and eat whatever you want. I mean, come on.
yeah.
Amy says, someone mentioned drive-through on the way home is always an option. It's downright rude to complain what someone serves you. It's okay if you don't like it, just maybe don't go over to their house during meal times if you don't like their cooking. And Mary says, why don't they just agree to meet up at Chipotle?
Does Chipotle have gluten-free? I mean, they must, right? I mean, a lot of places are accommodating gluten-free type things, right? Speaking of gluten-free, it's tea time. There was no segue there that made sense, but we're about to hear a jovial Bobstein joke, folks, and that's going to make as much sense as my segue.
What do you get if you cross King Kong with a kangaroo?
What do you get if you cross King Kong with a kangaroo? Maybe you get a Kanga Kong? I don't know. Let's see what people have to say. Oh, we're gonna start a poll, folks. I have to end my poll first.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, well, it was mostly 50% of the people wanted decorations, so decorations win.
Narrowly. They narrowly eked out costumes.
We're gonna start a poll. T. It's gonna be called T. And one more option, and Megament. Okay, so we're trying to figure out the great mystery of life. And that is what we call if a kangaroo is crossed with King Kong.
Ooh, a kangaroo. I like that. That's not the answer Jovial Bob sign had, but
I think a kangaroo works. Kick off. You know.
now the poll is okay. There we go.
Oh yeah, no, the poll isn't broken.
No, it was blocking my view.
Oh, it was blocking your view.
I didn't want to vote because I'm a cheater and I can see your T tag.
Yeah, Amber's going to cheat. That's what she said, folks.
Do you want the answer?
Sure, we'll take the answer.
Big holes in the ground.
Big holes in the ground. For once, I actually think that makes sense. You would get really big holes in the ground if King Kong was jumping like that, so I think that's fair. It's a good way to level out the ground, though. So if you ever want to build a house, just build it in Kangaroo's footsteps. That's what I have to say. So we got 60% of people saying Mega Mint. We got 40% of people saying Earl Grey. Is that it? We're gonna reveal the answer. It's Earl Grey. So yes, Heather is drinking some cola and whiskey. Elena's got some sweet tea. Oh, so many guesses. Licorice spice, Mega Mint. Everyone's gonna change their answers because I didn't close the poll down.
Yeah.
Water.
Hmm. Water for me as well.
Amber's got water. It's invisible water. And let's get to our final and last story, folks. Let's see what it is. Let's see what it is. Oops, that's not the right screen. Our last letter for this evening is titled, Am I a jerk for meowing with my cat? Yes.
No.
I'm just kidding. I have a very vocal cat, an 8-year-old male. He meows a lot and also expects a response to his meowing. If you don't respond, he becomes a bit stressed, insulted. Cats are always insulted. And he seems to really enjoy having this interaction with me. I always meow when he does, and we have a conversation where we meow at each other. My partner hates this. Partner thinks that the noise is awful and that he wants me to teach the cat to stop meowing, or at the very least wants me to ignore my cat when he meows at me. But to me, this would be like ignoring a friend trying to talk to me. My partner considers me the jerk for not stopping with the meowing despite being told that this is very annoying and thinks that it's very little effort. Am I the jerk for not respecting my partner's boundaries here and meowing at my cat? To meow or not to meow? That is the question.
Always meow. I mean, I may be biased here because I will meow at cats. When Brian's mom lived in the area, I would meow at Calliope all the time. She'd meow back at me and we'd have little conversations. And it should be known as I was one of the only people that Calliope actually liked. So
yeah, Calliope was a very skittish cat, and she liked Amber a lot.
It took a while to win her over, but eventually I did. So yeah, I mean, I think it's also worth noting that Opie has had her cat for 6 years and her boyfriend for 2. So he moved into their dynamic and not the other way around.
Oh, she didn't have them for the whole 8 years? It was an adoption?
Yeah, so she had him for 6 years. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with meowing with your cat. And I think if you move in with someone with a pet and they already have a dynamic, as long as it's not destructive, like you kind of should go along with it to a degree.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. It's like he's known for 2 years now that OP meows at their cat. And if this was like a deal breaker, right? Then they should have made that apparent a long time ago. Is all I have to say on that. So no, I don't think that OP's in the wrong. I think that this is pretty normal for people to meow at their cats. I think a lot of people do. And that's just really the reality of being a cat owner or cat parent, right? Is that you meow at cats. Plain and simple.
And Elena says, immediately not the jerk. We do this with both of ours all the time. Mr. Superplush says, wholesome. June says, that is hilarious. Mary says, not the jerk. OP should start meowing in the shower to memories. Elena says, Mary, I love it. June says, not the jerk. Tell your partner they are annoying. Heather says, of course the cat would be insulted. He's talking and wants a response. Always meow.
Yeah.
Mr. Superplush says, if the little house gremlins require your attention, you provide it. It's just the rules.
The rules are rules, Mr. Superplush. Rules are rules.
Amy says, I mean, I can see how it could be obnoxious, but I think it's cute that Opie can talk to animals and understand what their animal is saying. So meow away. Cat comes first. And June says her partner is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all very fair. Very, very fair. I like it. I like it. I thought that one was a nice, wholesome one to end on. Not so stressful. But speaking of which, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Friday. It is Friday. I was going to go through my whole end spiel where I have it like almost programmed in. It's like if I were a cat and I was meowing. I don't know. It almost worked in my head, but it didn't quite work in reality. Folks, as you can see, I have updated the live stream schedule. You can see that our next live stream is October 27th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. 10 p.m. UTC if you're one of those people. Amber, we need some kind of I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna put you on the spot for moral advice and or guidance. Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am so happy that you made it here today. I'm glad that you joined us, Mr. Superplush. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Heather, June, Mary,
Oh
Mr. Super
yes,
Plush.
I love the idea. We should all dress up in costume next time. I think that should.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. It's going to be a costume party.
Yep.
So,
Costumes will not be required, but I think it's a great for anyone who wants to participate.
costumes are required. I'll be watching you. No, I mean, that's ridiculous. You'll have to let us know what you dress up as, though.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you here next month.
Bye.
Take care. Well, I'll hang out for a second and I'll read people's comments for a moment. Amber's gonna scurry away.
Mm-hmm.
She's grabbing her water. Oh, PJs. PJs are a good costume, June. Thank you, Heather. Have a great weekend as well. Bye, Mr. Superflash. Bye, Mary. We'll see you tomorrow, June.